I still remember the sound of their laughter as the truck pulled away. Tires spitting dust into the hot air while my heart dropped like a stone. "Kyle," I shouted, running after them, my arms flailing helplessly. "Kyle." But my husband didn't turn back. His brothers Brad and Chase stuck their heads out the windows, recording the whole thing as if it were the best joke they'd ever pulled. "Good luck." "Lena." "See you in 300 miles?" Chase yelled, his voice echoing down that empty stretch of road. The gas station where they left me was the loneliest place I'd ever stood. One pump, a bathroom that reeked of bleach and mildew, a vending machine with a few crumpled bags of chips no one had bought in years. My phone was almost dead. My wallet was still in the truck. I had nothing but a half-warm bottle of water I'd been carrying, the one I picked up after Kyle asked me, so sweetly, to grab him an energy drink because he was too tired to walk inside. At first I thought it was a joke. 5 minutes passed, then 20. An hour crawled by. Every time I expected the truck to reappear around the bend, but it never did. When my phone buzzed, I nearly cried with relief until I read the message. "Don't be mad. Babe, just a prank. We'll come back in a bit." My battery died moments later, leaving me with that single sentence burning in my chest. That was the moment it clicked. Not like lightning, but slowly. The way you realize you've been sick for so long you've forgotten what it feels like to be well. Kyle wasn't coming back. Not soon. Maybe not ever. And suddenly, I didn't want him to. I'd spent 5 years bending myself into someone small and quiet enough to keep that family happy, smiling through sarcastic remarks, laughing at jokes that were never funny, cooking dinners and attending birthdays where I was the easy target. They called it pranking. I called it cruelty. Yet every time I tried to speak up, Kyle told me to lighten up, to stop being so sensitive. I thought maybe he was right. Maybe I was the problem. But sitting on that curb in the burning sun, I knew I wasn't. A woman in a minivan pulled in. 2 kids chattered in the back seat while she filled her tank. She noticed me sweaty, pale, stranded, and asked if I needed help. I told her I'd be fine, but she didn't believe me. "I can take you as far as I'm going," she said. I climbed into her van without hesitation, for the first time in years. I felt like someone saw me. Her name was Marcy. She gave me snacks, a phone charger, even a $10 bill just in case. She didn't ask for my story, and I didn't offer one. We drove for hours in silence, and I didn't cry once. I think I'd cried too much already. She dropped me off at a small bus station in a town I didn't know. I thanked her, clutching that $10 bill like it was gold, with the last bit of power left on my phone. I sent a message to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Aunt May. Just 5 words. "Can I come stay a while?" Her reply came within minutes. "Always come home." That night, I bought a one-way ticket with the small savings I had tucked away. Money I'd been hiding for years without knowing why. As the bus rumbled through the night, I stared out at the endless dark and realized something powerful. I wasn't going back. Not to Kyle, not to his brothers, not to the version of myself who thought she had to laugh through pain just to belong. When the bus hissed to a stop the next morning, the air smelled of saltwater and pine. Aunt May was waiting in her old blue pickup. She looked older than I remembered, but when she hugged me, it felt like no time had passed. She didn't ask what happened. She just said, "Let's get you inside." Her home was small, with chipped fences and flower beds overflowing with wild blooms. It smelled of lemon polish and fresh bread. Warm and safe in a way I hadn't felt in years. I slept for 2 days straight, my body finally surrendering after years of tension and forced smiles. When I woke, Aunt May slid a plate of eggs and toast in front of me and handed me an envelope with a few bills tucked inside. "My friend at the diner could use help," she said. "They don't ask a lot of questions. Just tell them your name is Lena Morgan. Morgan, my mother's maiden name." I whispered it aloud and felt it settle over me like a familiar coat. For the first time in a long time, I had a name that belonged to me. The diner was a small place near the water, with cracked leather booths and menus so faded the print was hard to read. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Mrs. Carter, the owner, paid me cash at the end of each shift and didn't ask many questions. I poured coffee, refilled napkin holders, and learned the rhythm of a place that came alive with regulars, fishermen with sunburned faces, retirees with stories they'd told 100 times, and the occasional tourist passing through. They all called me Lena, and every time I heard it, I felt a little stronger. At night, Aunt May and I sat on the porch, sipping sweet tea while the ocean swallowed the sun. She never pushed me to talk. Sometimes she hummed old tunes, sometimes she knitted, and sometimes we just sat in silence. That silence was healing in ways I didn't expect. For the first time, I wasn't bracing for the next joke at my expense. I wasn't walking on eggshells. I was just living. A few weeks later, everything shifted again. It was a slow Tuesday afternoon at the diner. The bell over the door jingled and a man stumbled in. Tall and rough around the edges, his shirt soaked in blood. For a split second, I thought it was another prank. That instinct was burned into me. But the look in his eyes told me it was real. Help. He gasped before collapsing near the counter. My body moved before my brain caught up. I dropped to my knees, pressed a towel to his side, whispered that he'd be okay. Mrs. Carter called 911, and within minutes, the place filled with flashing lights and medics before they wheeled him out. He grabbed my wrist with surprising strength and whispered, "Thank you." His name, I learned, was Grant. I didn't expect to see him again, but a few days later, he returned, bruised, limping, but standing. He slid into a booth and asked for coffee. Then he asked for my name. "Lena," I said cautiously. He smiled faintly and replied, "Thank you for saving my life." Lena. He started coming back every few days, always to the same booth by the window. Sometimes he read the newspaper. Sometimes he just stared out at the ocean. He didn't talk much at first. But when he did, he was different from the men I'd known. He didn't interrupt, didn't turn everything into a joke, didn't try to make himself the center of the story. He listened. It felt strange, unfamiliar, and disarming. By autumn, Grant had become part of my days. He never spoke much about his past, and I didn't press. It felt like we had an unspoken agreement he wouldn't ask who I used to be, and I wouldn't ask what he was running from. We just existed in the present. Quiet mornings, coffee refills, soft glances that lingered longer than they should have. Then one stormy evening, everything changed. The diner closed early, and I walked home through sheets of rain, pulling my coat tight. When I reached Aunt May's porch, a figure sat hunched on the steps, drenched and shivering. Grant. His hair clung to his forehead, his hands buried deep in his jacket. When he looked up at me, his eyes were raw. "I didn't know where else to go," he said. I nodded and opened the door. Aunt May was at her church group and wouldn't be home until morning. I gave him a towel, brewed tea, and we sat at the kitchen table listening to the storm rattle the windows. After a long silence, he spoke. "I used to be a detective," he said quietly. "Narcotics division. I got too close to something I wasn't supposed to. My partner was dirty, on the payroll. He set me up, left me for dead." He touched his side absent-mindedly, the place where I'd pressed the towel weeks earlier. "They said it was a deal gone wrong, covered it up." But I knew the truth. I lost everything: my badge, my home, my name. So I ran. His eyes searched mine, almost like he expected me to flinch. Instead, I said softly, "Sounds like you needed somewhere safe." He nodded, relief flickering across his face. We didn't speak after that, just sipped tea while thunder shook the sky. Later, I brought him a blanket for the couch. As I turned to leave, he brushed my hand lightly and whispered, "Thank you, Lena, for everything." After that night, Grant was no longer just a customer. He fixed Aunt May's porch railing, carried groceries, swept leaves from the walkway. He never acted like it was a favor. He just showed up, steady and present. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. But peace never stays untouched. One afternoon, I came home to find the front door wide open. Aunt May was out, and my chest tightened. Inside, everything looked normal except for one drawer, the one where she kept spare cash, hanging open. Nothing else was missing, but the feeling was undeniable. Someone had been there. I called Grant. He arrived within minutes, his jaw tight as he checked locks, circled the property, scanned the shadows. "This isn't random," he muttered. "Someone's watching." "Me?" I asked. He didn't answer. From then on, Grant stayed closer. He changed the locks, installed a small camera above the porch, even left a flashlight by the door. He was calm, but I could tell his mind was racing. That night, I slept with the light on for the first time in years. Aunt May folded laundry the next evening and said gently, "Sometimes the people we run from don't chase us because they want us back. They chase us because they lost control." Her words sank deep. I wasn't scared of Kyle anymore. Not really. What scared me was what he might do if he realized I wasn't afraid. It had been nearly 5 years since I last heard his voice, but when I opened the door that evening and saw Kyle standing there, it was as if time collapsed on itself. My breath caught in my throat. My hands went numb. He looked older, thinner, his hair longer and his eyes hollow. He lifted his hand slowly, almost like he didn't want to frighten me. "Lena," he said softly, "please, can we talk?" I froze, my mind racing. How had he found me? I had been careful. I'd used another name, avoided posting anything online, told almost no one where I was. Yet somehow, here he was, standing on the porch of the only safe place I had left. Before I could answer, footsteps sounded behind me. Grant stepped into the doorway, calm but steady, positioning himself just slightly in front of me. His voice was firm, almost too calm. "Who are you?" Kyle blinked, caught off guard. "I'm her husband." The word hit me like a slap. Husband. As if 5 years of silence hadn't happened. As if the day he abandoned me at that gas station was some minor spat I should have long forgiven. My throat tightened, but my voice came out steady. "I'm not your wife." Kyle's eyes darted between us, uneasy. "Lena, please, just give me 5 minutes." Grant glanced at me, and in that small, silent gesture, gave me the choice. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me so Grant stayed inside. Kyle and I stood on the porch, the wind carrying the smell of rain-soaked leaves and sea salt. For a long time, he said nothing. Then his voice broke the silence. "I've been looking for you, ever since the video." I frowned. "What video?" His face shifted with something like shame. "Brad and Chase started a podcast last year. They told stories, just messing around. And one day they bragged about what they did to you at the gas station. They thought it was hilarious." My stomach twisted, but I kept my expression flat. "It went viral," he continued. "People were outraged. I didn't even know they were going to share it. But when I saw the clip, I I snapped. I left them. Got out of the business. I've been trying to fix my life. And I've been trying to find you for more than a year. Why now? I asked coldly. His shoulders slumped. Because I can't carry it anymore. What I did. What we did, it haunts me. I wanted to believe him. But his regret was 5 years too late. My voice was low but sharp. You thought it was funny. You all laughed. I know, he whispered. I was stupid. I didn't see what I was doing to you until it was too late. You didn't come back, I said. Not that day, not the next, not ever. He winced, the words hitting their mark. I thought you were just angry. I thought you'd cool off and come home. I shook my head. I wasn't waiting. I left. I saved myself. Because none of you ever would. The door creaked open behind me, and Grant stepped out. Quiet, but steady. His presence a wall at my back. Kyle looked at him, confusion flickering across his face. Who is he? I didn't hesitate. My fiancé. Kyle's jaw tightened, his mouth opening like he wanted to argue, but then closing again. He took a slow step back, his voice lower now. You didn't just lose me because of one prank, I said softly. You lost me because you never saw me, not once. His shoulders sagged. He looked like a man finally feeling the weight of something he couldn't shake off. I guess I deserve that, he said quietly. You did. He nodded once, turned, and walked away down the misty street, before disappearing. He paused and murmured without looking back. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're okay. Then he was gone. I stood frozen on the porch, the night heavy around me. Grant's hand rested lightly on my back. You all right? He asked. I nodded. And for the first time, I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel small. I felt free. But Kyle wasn't finished. The very next afternoon, he returned slower this time. No pleading, no anger, just a quiet knock on the door. When I opened it, he stayed on the porch. I'm not here to argue, he said. I just want to understand what happened after I left you there. So I told him. Not everything. Not the new name or the nights I cried into Aunt May's sweater, but the parts that mattered. How I waited hours in the sun. How I realized I didn't want to be found anymore. How I used the money he never knew I saved to buy a bus ticket and vanish. He listened. His face lined with regret. I thought you were being dramatic. I didn't know. No, I cut in. That's the problem. You never knew. Every time I tried to tell you, you told me to laugh it off. When I couldn't, I became the problem. He didn't argue. He only nodded slowly. I saw the way he looks at you, Kyle said quietly, glancing toward the door. He's not just your fiancé. He's the one who showed up when I didn't. He is, I said simply. Kyle swallowed hard, then pulled something from his pocket. A folded photograph. Our honeymoon. I barely recognized the woman in it, hopeful, tired, but still clinging to something. He held it out, but I didn't take it. I'm not that girl anymore, I whispered. And you're not that man. We both changed. Only one of us learned from it. His voice cracked. I'll regret it for the rest of my life. You should, I said. The door opened behind me again. Grant stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag. Calm as always. He stood beside me without a word. Kyle looked between us, then gave a final nod. No more pleading, no more words. Just a quiet turn as he walked away down the path. Shoulders slumped and disappeared. This time, I knew he wasn't coming back. The day after Kyle's final visit, I sat on the back porch with a mug of tea. The ocean breeze lifting strands of my hair as thoughts tangled in my head. He had stood right there, on the very steps where I'd rebuilt my life. And for the first time in years, I had said everything I needed to. He hadn't shouted. hadn't begged, hadn't fought. He'd just looked at me with the weight of a man who finally saw what he had lost, and for the first time. I didn't feel like I owed him anything, not forgiveness, not another chance, not even my anger. Life settled back into rhythm after that, though there was a quiet shift in me. Grant sensed it. He didn't ask questions, didn't press, but he stayed close in that steady way of his. One evening, as we watched the sun bleed orange into the sea, he asked softly, "Do you feel lighter?" I thought for a moment, then nodded. Yes. Like I closed a door that should have been locked years ago. He squeezed my hand, and in that simple gesture I knew I was safe. Not because he protected me, but because he let me be me, even when broken pieces still clung to me. Months passed. Aunt May's health began to wane. Though she never complained, she moved slower, rested more, but still hummed her little tunes while knitting in the evenings. One night, as I tucked a blanket over her legs, she touched my arm. "You found your place, Lena. Don't be afraid to claim it." I didn't fully understand then, but I would later. When Aunt May passed quietly in her sleep that spring, the loss hit me harder than I expected. She had been the anchor that steadied me when I was drifting. And suddenly the house felt too quiet, too still. Grant was there every moment, helping with arrangements, fixing the fence, even cooking simple meals when I couldn't bring myself to. We buried her under a tree she loved, with wildflowers scattered across the fresh earth. That night, I told Grant through tears. She gave me a second chance. I don't know if I deserve it. He brushed my hair back gently. You do. You more than do. It was in the months that followed that Grant and I began to feel less like two people surviving separately and more like two lives twining together. He helped me repair the house, and I learned to cook his favorite dishes. He didn't laugh at my clumsy jokes, but he smiled at them like they mattered. Slowly, the sharp edges of my past softened. But peace, as always, had a way of being tested. Word spread of Brad and Chase's latest stunt, a so-called prank on a young woman at her workplace. They'd rigged her office with hidden cameras, planted fake eviction notices, even filled her drawers with shaving cream bombs. She'd panicked, collapsed, and suffered a seizure. This time, no one laughed. The internet turned on them. And the woman pressed charges. Soon after, I was asked to testify. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I knew what those men were capable of. The prank that had left me stranded was only one of countless cruelties, and it was time someone peeled back the curtain. The day of the trial, I walked into the courthouse wearing a navy blazer, Grant's hand steady in mine. Reporters whispered and snapped photos as we passed, their curiosity buzzing in the air. Inside, Brad and Chase sat at the defense table in suits that looked more like costumes than armor. Their swagger was gone. Chase fiddled with his tie. Brad stared at the floor. Kyle sat behind them, smaller than I remembered. His head bowed as though the weight of everything finally pressed too heavy on his shoulders. When my name was called, I took the witness stand. The lawyer asked about the gas station prank, the story that had made Brad and Chase viral before their downfall. My voice didn't shake as I recounted the day, the blistering sun, the endless hours of waiting, the message that mocked me, the realization that I had never been loved the way I deserved. I didn't just tell them what happened. I told them what people never saw, the nightmares that followed, the trust that crumbled, the quiet choice to vanish because staying would have meant slowly disappearing piece by piece. The courtroom fell silent when I finished. Even the judge looked unsettled. Brad shifted uncomfortably. Chase stared at the table. Kyle sat perfectly still, his hands clenched in his lap. When the session ended, I walked outside into bright sunlight. Grant's presence steady beside me. Reporters surged forward, but I ignored them. Behind me, I heard my name. Kyle! I turned. He stopped a few feet away, his eyes tired, voice raw. I don't know what I thought would happen today. I do, I said calmly. You thought I'd still be waiting. He flinched. I continued. You never came back. Not that day, not the next. Not ever. What you regret isn't what happened to me, it's what you lost. His lips parted, but no words came. He glanced at Grant, standing tall at my side, then back at me, and him, he asked quietly. A small smile touched my lips. He didn't find me whole. He found me broken, and he never tried to fix me. He just stood beside me while I healed myself. Kyle's eyes watered, his voice cracking. Do you still hate me? I don't hate you, I said softly. I just don't belong to you anymore. With that, I turned away. Grant's hand slipped into mine, warm and certain, as we walked down the courthouse steps together, behind me. I knew Kyle was standing alone, the way I once stood on a roadside watching him drive away. Only this time, I wasn't the one left behind. I was the one walking forward. The courthouse steps felt warmer under my shoes than I expected. Sunlight streaming through the crowd of reporters and curious onlookers, their voices blurred into meaningless noise as Grant and I walked forward together. I didn't need to answer their questions or relive the story for strangers anymore. I had already spoken my truth where it mattered. In the weeks after the trial, the news was full of Brad and Chase. Their prank empire had collapsed overnight, their sponsorships and fans gone, replaced by outrage and disgust. The court found them guilty of reckless endangerment, and they faced sentences that stripped away the swagger they'd once worn like armor. Kyle was there too, not in chains, but in shame. He wasn't charged, but his silence through the years was exposed for what it was: complicity. He never reached out again after that last conversation outside the courthouse, I think. Finally, he understood there was no place for him in my story anymore. Life settled back into a quieter rhythm. I kept working at the diner, greeting the fishermen at dawn and wiping tables after the lunch rush. Grant repaired the fence around Aunt May's garden, then planted wildflowers she had loved. Every evening, we sat on the porch as the ocean painted the horizon in shifting shades of gold and pink. Sometimes, we didn't speak at all, but in the silence there was peace, not fear. One night, as we watched the stars flicker above the dark water, Grant turned to me with that calm steadiness I had grown to love. You know, he said, you're stronger than anyone I've ever met. I smiled faintly, shaking my head. I don't feel strong. I just survived. He reached over, lacing his fingers with mine. Surviving is strength. Lena, don't ever forget that. It struck me then that he wasn't just in my life because I had saved him once in a diner, pressing a towel against his bleeding side. He stayed because he saw me, not as broken or fragile, but as someone worth standing beside. For years, I had mistaken cruelty for affection, thinking laughter at my expense meant love. But love was this quiet, steady, patient. Months later, on a morning when the air smelled of salt and the sky glowed soft blue, Grant and I stood together in a courthouse not for testimony, but for vows. I wore a simple navy dress, nothing elaborate, just something that felt like me. Grant's hand trembled slightly as he slipped a silver band onto my finger, but his eyes never wavered. They held mine as if promising me that no matter what storms came, he would never disappear into laughter or cruelty. As we walked out, the world felt both familiar and entirely new. I wasn't just Lena anymore. I was Lena Morgan by choice, carrying my mother's name and my own story, no longer defined by what I'd endured, but by what I had chosen to become. Looking back now, I sometimes think about that gas station in the middle of nowhere, about the dust, the sunburned curb, the message on my dying phone. For a long time, that memory felt like the cruelest wound. But now, I see it differently. That day wasn't just the moment Kyle abandoned me, it was the moment life cracked open and handed me a choice. I could wait forever for someone who would never come back, or I could stand up and walk forward on my own. I chose to walk, and in walking, I found not only safety, not only Aunt May's porch and a small-town diner, but also the strength I thought I had lost. I found Grant, and more importantly, I found myself. The lesson I carry is simple sometimes. The cruelest betrayal becomes the door to freedom. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most give you, without meaning to, the push you need to reclaim your life. Pain can shape you, but it doesn't have to define you. Love isn't loud or mocking or careless. Love is quiet presence, shared burdens, and the safety of knowing you are seen exactly as you are. So if you're listening to my story and wondering what it means for you, I hope you remember this. You are allowed to walk away from what breaks you. You are allowed to choose peace over chaos. And you are worthy of a love that feels like home, not like a test you'll never pass. Thank you for walking through this story with me. If it resonated with you, please like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and stories, too.